Listo.
Si nos tagueaste para compartirlo.
Todavía no para presentarlos, porque ya estamos en vivo, me parece.
Sí.
Bueno.
En el live, ¿verdad?
Déjame lo comparto en el mío. Thanks.
Aquí está.
Bueno, ya estamos. We are live now in the Facebook Live of the Vancouver Latin American Film Festival. I'm just gonna share this video in a couple of platforms so we can be sure that we are be seen by some people. But this conversation is gonna stay live at the Vancouver Latin American Film Festival Facebook. That's what you can. We are live now. That's where you can watch it, and that was the sound of my computer coming in. Just 1 second. Perfect. Well, welcome all. Welcome Kathleen Mullen, Anisha Platzer, Antonella Sudasassi, who is joining us from San Jose, Costa Rica. The rest of us are, well, I'm in Vancouver, Anisha's in Vancouver, and Kathleen is in the Sunshine Coast, not too far from Vancouver. My name is Christian Cid. I'm the director of the Vancouver Latin American Film Festival, and I'm joined to have a conversation with Antonella, with Kathleen Mullen, who is now the director of $3 Bill Cinema, the Seattle's queer and gay film festival. She's also a filmmaker herself, and she has worked in multiple festivals around North America. Thank you, Kathleen, for joining us for this conversation. We also have Anisha Platzer. She's a local filmmaker who just came back not too long ago from Cuba, where she was studying at the Cuba Film School, San Antonio de los Baños. Her film by then, by the way, is screened at the DOXA Documentary Film Festival, which starts in about 2 days. DOXA, that's where you can catch a DOXA. Thank you, Anisha, for being with us today. And from San Jose, Antonella, the writer and director of El Despertar de las Hormigas, The Awakening of the Ants. This is Antonella's first feature-length film. The film premiered last year at the Berlin Film Festival. It was a screen at Seattle Film Festival, the International Film Festival, where it won the prize of Best Latin American Film. Ibero-American, they call it in Seattle because they include Spain and Portugal. And also Antonella came last year to the festival where we screened the film. Thank you, Antonella, for joining us all the way from San Jose. Muy buenas tardes a todos. Kathleen, Nisha, please be welcome to start the conversation. It's interesting, we see a film from Costa Rica. We don't see a lot of films from Costa Rica, but I have to say in the past few years, there have been films such as Ceniza Negra that premiered at Cannes a couple of years ago. Now we have El Despertar de las Hormigas, The Awakening of the Ants. I mean, in Vancouver, last year we showed many Costa Rican films, one directed by Julio Hernández Cordón, Atrás hay Relámpagos, and many others. So Costa Rica has been present at the festival, but I know it's not a country that many people have seen the film. The film is available now to watch only for Canada. It's locked only to watch it in Canada. You can watch it until June 20. All the information is at our website at vlaf.org. Kathleen, Nisha, please, you go first.
Well, I would love to just start with, you were just naming a few Costa Rican films, and I'm wondering how much the outside of the urban context is represented in Costa Rican film, because your film is so distinctly non-urban. And I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about that with regard to Costa Rican film in general, but your film and why you decided to make the film there.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for the invitation. And thank you, Christian, again, for showing our film in the festival last year. Well, basically, that's a good question because, I think Costa Rica, even if the industry is very small and we don't have that large history of cinema, there are many films that portray different parts of Costa Rica. because Costa Rica is very, very small. So it's quite easy, you know, to go to the different places. Well, of course, I mean, I think most of the films have beaches on it. Like the coast is portrayed a lot because we have a lot. And we have the Caribbean and the Pacific. So many of the films usually have a scene or a sequence, you know, on the beach. This particular film, El Despertar de las Hormigas, or The Awakening of the Ants, also known as Hormigas in English, was shot in San Mateo, Alajuela, which is a town that it's 1 hour, 1 hour and a half away from the center, which is, let's say, not much, but it's already very rural in comparison to the main city. I wanted to shoot it there because basically that's a small town on the skirts of the great metropolitan area. And when I was growing up, we tend to go through it wasn't a highway, it was like a very, you know, like a very curved street, which was like ups, highs, you know, like very curvy. And we always stopped in this small town after, because I come from a big family and we were like 5 children in one car with 2 parents going crazy. So after all these curves, you know, always one of my sisters or even myself needed to go to the bathroom, have a break because we were very dizzy or whatever. So we stopped in this very small town. And what I loved the most when I was looking for a location, because I wanted to shoot the film in a place that had this sense of a small town, because I grew up in the city, but I grew up in a small neighborhood, like a very, you know, this neighborhood that you feel like it was a very small town. So I wanted to portray that in the film. And this town where San Mateo, I used to go by, and when I was looking for a location 25 years ago, 25 years after, I mean, not 25 years ago, that wouldn't be, I mean, I'm not so old yet, but I mean, 25 years after I visited that when I was little, it was exactly the same, you know, like exactly the same as I remembered when I was a kid. So I really love that. And one day I decided to go there to see if, you know, to talk to the people. And I started talking to the person that had the mini market. So he told me, yes, you can shoot here. And I wanted to, like, you know, like leave a little bit the town to get to know the people, to get to know the place. And I started living with them like a small family. They accepted me immediately in their house. So I stayed the first time for 1 week and a half. And after that, I went back a few weeks, you know, to do some research and write the script and really embrace the feeling of that small town. So in that sense, that was the idea, you know, like to portray this family in the very small town and how people connect, and, you know, like how everybody is, even the neighbors, the family that live just beside you, you know, like they are all involved in what you do and how you do things, and they all have an opinion about it. So I wanted to have that sense on the film, that feeling.
Great. Oh, I love that. Yeah, I really connected with your film. And you had people, you were saying earlier, you had people from the town act in the film as well. Yeah, great.
Yes, exactly. Basically, we have Daniela Valenciano, which does the role of Isabel. She's she's a professional actress. And then Leinar Gomez, which is Alcides, the husband in the film. Those two are professional actors, besides the mother-in-law, which also is an actress. She works mostly as a teacher, teaching theater, but they were the only ones that had experience. Also, Adriana Alvarez, which is the cuñada, how do you say, Kristen? Cuñada? The sister-in-law?
Sister-in-law.
Yeah, okay. The sister-in-law. So those were the only ones that came outside San Mateo. Most of the cast, or almost all of the cast, the rest of the cast comes from San Mateo.
So I'll just say a few words. So I saw the film originally at the Seattle International Film Festival. So that was really amazing to see it there. I saw it on the big screen, so that was a treat when we could go to the theaters. Yeah, and it really struck me. I mean, her journey is so internal. I mean, the first scene really with the cake, it just sets up her journey. And I'm just, maybe if you could talk a little bit about your decision making in terms of sort of, you know, putting together reality and fantasy, and her sort of coming into herself, to talk a little bit about your process on that.
Okay, well, the idea of the main character in itself was to work with a person that wasn't used to say or talk about her feelings. You know, like it was a person that was more interested or more concerned about others' feelings instead of hers. And the whole idea was, I mean, I was somehow, I wanted to talk about what I grew up with, which was like, I learned everything I knew from my mother, from my aunts, and from my grandmothers. I come from a huge family. I mean, like my mother has, 10 brothers and sisters. My father, like there are 7 in total. So family for me was very, very, very important when I was growing up. And I wanted to portray somehow the role of the women I grew up with. And I always question myself, what does it mean to always be behind others and trying to make that others feel okay, that others, you know, like to put others first. Mm-hmm. Because I remember, I mean, like something very personal about my mother. Like I, you know, in comparison with my friends when I was growing up in school or high school, like I saw all the mothers of my friends, you know, like they were very well dressed, and they were, you know, like they were very pretty, and they go to the salon and they made their hair. And instead my mother, who had 5 children, she was always struggling, and she was always, you know, like, you first. And always made me wonder, okay, why that sacrifice, you know, the way that you learn to love somehow, this maternal love that they teach you, it's to be at others' disposal, you know, at others' disposition, you know, like try to make everybody feel good. And then you are put behind, you know. Mm-hmm. And that was the role of Isabel, you know, like this person that somehow starts questioning that being there for others always, all the time. And I wanted to, you know, like have a, let's say, silent revolution, because it's very tiny, and she makes the biggest changes in so very tiny stuff. Yeah, exactly. It's like just changing the tiniest things in her daily routine, in her daily life, with the relationship with her husband and the relationship with her children. She changed very tiny things, and for her feels like a revolution. It's not like a change from one day to another. She was one person and then she's another person completely. It's more like these tiny steps to change. And I wanted to portray that in this almost, you know, like, let's say mundane or daily story.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it struck me when the husband, when she asked the husband to, you know, help her set the table, and he has no idea where the dishes are. And I love that. Like, this is like classic of like, well, how do I set the table? But it's like a simple thing that she's asking him to do, and it's so much bigger.
Yeah, of course, because I believe, like, depending on how we grew up and the education that we have, you know, like that is ridiculous. But the truth is, many families still live like that, you know, like it's so typical in a family, in a family party, you know, the women are inside cooking, serving, attending others, and the men are outside drinking, talking about whatever, football in this case, you know, like that's so typical still even now. Like that's basically how the routine or the dynamics of inside the family work. And what it has struck me the most, is like many people, even in countries that you think that are already so advanced, let's say, in gender roles and stuff like that, this film has resonated a lot, like they have come close. I mean, they came to me after the film showed, and they talked to me about it, and they told me like, this is my family, or this was my mother, this is my aunt, this was my grandmother in any case, like they really could relate with this situation and this pressure that this woman feel throughout the film. So it's very interesting because it struck me the most like in countries like Germany or South Korea, or like having so much in common.
Yeah. It's definitely
yeah,
very universal.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you.
I think what really stood out to me is how you were able to portray it in such a subtle and nuanced way. It's like the sexism permeates every minute of her life, as it does for most women. But, you didn't portray the husband as this terrible person, who's like physically abusive or something. It's like you did such a wonderful job of showing how stressful it is and what a toll it's taking on her, even though everything seems to be kind of on the surface okay and normal.
Yeah. Yeah, as I said, I wanted to also, like I always say that this is sort of an ode to the women that make so many changes in their lives, so that we now can have all that we have, like all the rights that we have and because we tend to think that change comes from one day to another, and we expect change to happen from one day to another. But the real thing is like, even now we're still, fighting for things that they were already fighting on the 60s. And like free abortion or sexual education, like even not to kill us in the streets, like it's awful. We're still fighting on that. And this film, yes, it's very, very subtle, but there's also many violences represented. For instance, sexual violence, like inside the marriage, or even the violence regarding who and how the money is managed inside the household, So I wanted to portray these many, many types of violences that still exist nowadays. And we see them as common, like we see them as something that it's so normal that we don't even notice. And the good thing is that the cinema can actually, because you watch in a big screen usually, or you pay attention for 1 hour and a half, even if it's on your phone. Like you pay attention to it. And because the film doesn't, there's not so big actions happening, like there's not a huge plot around the film. It's only about the details. So I think people really can observe the details and, like reflect on what does that mean and how does that, like weigh upon themselves. Because what I have encountered as well is like many men, when they actually, like have the bravery to talk after the like in the cine photo, like after the Q&A, they actually, or many times men have approached me and said, like, I really feel like I see this in many ways, like I know I'm not that guy because I'm not exactly like him, but I know that I still have a lot of things that I do that I should change because they saw it in the screen. So it has been very, very interesting, the journey that I had, that the film has had.
But it's interesting too with the husband. He's not a bad person, and I like that he's this kind of a bit. That he's just like you kind of like him, or he's just sort of bumbly. But so in a way, it's sort of there's these things that are happening, and you kind of make them sort of like we're seeing it as an audience, things of like, ooh, don't do that. But then you're also going like, this is so kind of real and realistic. And I like that you didn't make him a villain. Like you just make him kind of an everyday person who is trying to figure out his life as well, or figure out how to sort of be a good husband or be a good father, but also failing too in a way.
Yeah, I guess it's something like, I mean, aren't we all like that? Like we don't, I mean, we're not bad people, and people usually don't do bad stuff because they are bad intended. Even the mother-in-law, you know, like she's so over Isabel, and she doesn't have bad intentions. But the thing is, like, we learn to do this stuff and we never question them. And that's exactly the role Alcides plays on the film, you know, like, is this guy that you can consider him a good guy, even if he's very violent when they have sex, or he, you know, manages the money, and, you know, but even so, he's not a bad guy, and you can relate to him, and you can feel like, you know, people like him, or your father, your grandfather, your uncle is like that, you know. And the thing is, like, most people are like that. They don't really mean bad, you know, like they don't really have the intention or the bad intention to do bad. It's just that they learn that, and it's very hard to acknowledge what you do as naturally as Alcides does in the film. So I think it's that. It's just like it takes a while. Even myself, I grew up in a household where I was asked to wash the dishes of my brother. And since I was like 5, I remember saying to my mother, like, why should I, you know, like my brother was older than me, and I was saying like, why do I have to wash he has hands as well as I do, you know, like, what's the difference? But things change along the way because we talk about these things, and of course society is changing, but, you know, like, how much does it change really? You know, like, there's still so many things like that women endure even now, like in El Salvador, for instance. You can be like condemned to 30 years of prison if you have an spontaneous abortion. You know, it's like ridiculous.
Yeah, just with regard to the children, you touch on that as well in the film, where you see the father almost like training them in the same way that to serve men in the same way that older women do. And so they're treated, you know, older than their age in that way. But then the scene where Isa is talking to her best friend about her daughter moving in a certain way, and the friend is kind of, who's a little bit more kind of liberated maybe, she talks about how she's maybe discovering pleasure in some way, and it's like she's too young for that, you know. So we infantilize them in certain ways, and then we expect them to be older than their years in other ways.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, it's this transition age, you know, like there's a saying, I don't know if you have it in English, but in Costa Rica or in Spanish, we call it, when we get the period, the period, when we get our period, we are considered now to be señoritas, you know, like young ladies.
Yeah.
And what does it mean? You know, like, what does it mean to be a señorita instead of a kid, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Does it mean that you're already sexually available? You know, like, it determines a lot. And when you're growing up, you know, like, you discover, I mean, it's a phase that you start feeling a lot of things. And I wanted to bring that into the film because I wanted to somehow talk about female sexuality that is not so explored. Well, the project also is part of a bigger project. I mean, like, the film is part of a bigger project. It's actually 3 films. Before this film, I did a short film that represented the first orgasm of a 10-year-old. And it was also very interesting when we showed the short film, because people are not so used to see little girls, you know, enjoying their sexuality. It's usually little boys, you know, like when they wake up and they have, you know, like their hard penis or whatever, you know, and you see that a lot in films, in books, But female sexuality, especially in younger ages, it's sort of completely prohibited, like a 10-year-old enjoying herself. In this case, Isabella, the younger daughter, the older daughter, she was also, like starting to, and how does the mother react? And I wanted to bring that just to, enlarge the conversation a bit about sexuality.
Interesting. And so it's a 3-part series that you're working on then about female sexuality, or?
Exactly. It's a short film that it's about this child. I mean, the sexuality in younger age, then the film, and then I'm currently working on a documentary which portrays sexuality after 65.
Okay.
So it's a documentary, a hybrid film, let's say a creative documentary, which mixes fiction and documentary, but it works with real testimonies of women that are older than 65. And of course, in Costa Rica or in many countries, in Latin American countries, sexuality in older ages as well is such a taboo. It's like, seriously, even I wanted to put the women in front of the camera, but they didn't accept it. The only way that I managed to make them participate on the documentary was if they were not just being seen, and also the voices are not even recognized, that they were so ashamed about talking about these subjects. So it's quite interesting.
I'm gonna read just a couple of questions from the Facebook Live conversation. I mean, a few people say hello, but there are 2 questions. Antonella. Gard Dyke asks, I wanted to ask about the powerfully intimate style and film of the style and feel of the film. I noticed there are no establishing shots and not many master type shots. Was this always a plan, or was this due to confining locations or a mix of shows and circumstances?
No, it was a decision between me and my DP, Andres Campos, which is the director of photography. Of course, we were working in very reduced spaces, but we wanted to be part of the scene. Like, we never wanted to be, we never wanted the audience to feel as an outsider, like we wanted to be so close so that they really could say, like, I was part of that dinner, I was there. So we decided even about working with, when deciding the lenses we were going to work with, we didn't go, we worked from 35 to 50, almost everything was shot in 50. So with a 50 millimeters lens. So in that sense, that was an aesthetic decision. Like, we wanted to be so close that people actually felt inside the house, and felt also the claustrophobia, because sometimes you're just like, you need to breathe. And we wanted the spectator to feel exactly like Isabel felt in her own house. So yeah, and basically, actually, it was very hard to work with afterwards. That's also, like, you have to assume the responsibility of taking these decisions, because afterwards in editing was very hard, because we had one shot and that's it. Like, we had one plano shot and many takes. Yeah, shot takes. So it was like only one shot, a master shot, let's say, which was 7 minutes long, and we have many takes of the same thing. So we couldn't like cut between the different takes. So, but I didn't want it to cut. I wanted to, like, all the movement of the camera was like, like just panning around the characters so that we feel like we're in there, but also because I wanted all the movement to be internal, not external. I didn't want to move as much the camera and, do travelings, dollies or whatever. I wanted people to move in front of the camera. I wanted to allow the actors to act and to relate and to show us their dynamic as a family. And to accomplish this, because the 2 little girls are not family, and of course none of them are. We really worked with the actors, like 3 months prior. We worked with them, not rehearsing. Actually, what we did was that we just gather around and talk about different stuff and do different things, you know, like together, just for them to create a bond between themselves. So that the mother, you know, Isabel or Daniela, when she was, you know, approaching the girls, there was not such a big distance. Like they really could, you know, go hug Isabel as she was her mother. So it was, you know, like we had to work a lot with the actors so that what I proposed with the camera could work.
And there is a second question from Gerson Godinez. Congratulations to Antonella for bringing her creation to screenings around the world. It is a realistic and at the same time magical film in its narration. I really like the practical effects to represent the ideas of the main character. How did that inclination towards magical realism come about?
Okay. Well, I mean, I always knew that there had to be like an inner world of Isabel, of the main character. Like how, if it's a character that doesn't express herself, how do we manage to know what she's actually feeling, you know? And how do I represent that? So I started, okay, because the title of the movie was El Despertar de las Hormigas, or The Awakening of the Ants. I wanted to include nature because where we shot, like San Mateo, it's like from 24 to 34 degrees the whole year, you know, like it rains or it doesn't rain, but it's always sunny and hot. And there's a lot of, you know, like you go there and you hear the insects and you feel the animals and you feel nature. So even if the film is shot inside a house, like 80% of the film, like I wanted to bring that nature inside. So I decided to work with all these things. And mostly because I'm also very, you know, like I have these very heavy dreams, and I usually am like very cryptic dreams. And I must admit, like 2 or 3 of the hallucinations that Isabel had happened to me in real life or in dreams, which is even, I mean, it's even worse in real life. For instance, when she's showering and all the flies, or well, they're not flies, there are bees actually. They're called abejas enredapelo, which is like they tangle on your hair. That happened to me in real life. I was in a house close to the area and I opened the shower and then all these bees started surrounding me and I was like, oh Jesus, I have no idea how, but this has to be in the film. And also when she's touching the grass, you know, and she encounters a lot of hair of her own, that also happened to me, not in a good way. I was sitting on a park and I remember I was just like, I think I was laying down, you know, like I was laying down, seeing the sky or whatever. And then I started like touching the grass. And at some point I was like, what is this? Like, this is not grass. And I see it like this. And there were a lot of hairs. They probably just passed the lawn machine or what's the name? La podadora. And I don't know how, but the hairs of all the people that went on the park were like kind of mixed with the earth and the grass, and it was so disgusting. And then I said, okay, I don't know how, but this has to be in the film as well. This can be something. And I mean, like I knew from the beginning that I wanted to work with long hair actresses. So of course, hair was very important in this feeling of pressure, you know? And so I felt like this sort of hallucination was also very, very interesting to put inside Isabel's psychic, let's say.
Kathleen, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
You did? Okay. Well, okay. Well, I guess I would like to talk about the ants and the name of the film. I mean, the moment where the ants are taking over, like her hairbrush and all of that, like, you know, that moment of, so it's just they're taking over. But in a way you can see it also that she has to kind of, and maybe I would love you to talk a little bit about that, because for me it was also this thing of like, they're just getting inside her of like, I can't keep going with my life in the same way. But I'd love to know, like, sort of for you what that was. I mean, obviously as a filmmaker.
Yeah, well, basically because as I said, I wanted that nature invaded her most intimate spaces.
Mhm.
So that's why, I mean, and ants have been used in many, many ways during, I mean, art history to represent sexuality, or, you know, also many people have told me like ants, you know, like when you think about an ant, what does it mean? You know, and you think about a very hardworking ant, you know, like collaboration, and you think about all these things. And I wanted to include all these representations of ants and like resignify them in a way, you know. What does it mean for Isabel? Is it like a pressure, another level or layer of pressure, or is it her feelings, you know, like just coming out, or what is it? And what do you get about the ants? And it has been interesting because people, I mean, I don't want to explain why I wanted to include the ants, but many people actually give a lot of meaning to the ants, and I think that enriches somehow the lecture of the film.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I have meaning for me, you know.
What do you feel? I mean, like, what do you think?
I feel a combination of both, right? Like they're both invasive, like they're all over her hairbrush. And so it's like, but it's that also that thing of that liberation too, of like that thing of like, you can't stop thinking about something, or you have to face something, or you have to speak out, or, you know, like, so it sort of represents a number of things. And also that tension, right? For me, that tension of sexuality, but also wanting to please, and, you know, those tensions. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's also in the short film actually, when when the little girl has the orgasm. After the orgasm, she starts, you know, like feeling guilty about herself, and there's a conversation that she has with her mother, where her mother asks her like, "Did you feel some cosquillitas?" How do you say cosquillitas, Christian?
Tickles.
Tickles. Some little tickles. And they somehow in the short film are represented with ants as well. And I wanted to bring this element as well when when Isabel had the orgasm, you know, like all these ants crawling in her, you know, in her, and combine these two elements that are so like so recurrentes in the film. So soy fatal hoy en inglés. Llevo mucho tiempo en hablar en inglés. So constant in the film, you know, like the hair and the ants, they come many, many times in the film. So when she has her first self orgasm, or como se diga, well, both elements are represented there. So that's part of the imaginary that I created along through the film.
I wanted to ask you about the script and about the actors. Where did you find Daniela Valenciano, right? That's her name, Daniela. And how do you build the script? Did it take you many years? Was it more personal, or did you go to workshops, to film festivals, to do? How was it, the construction of the film, and how do you find Daniela?
Okay. Well, with Daniela is a professional actress. She didn't have any experience in film. She had only done theater. And I did like a closed casting. And I saw many actresses, professional actresses. And it took me like 6 to 8 months to decide who to work with, because I sort of take these decisions very slowly, you know, like I see them. At the first I said like, she's the one, but I wanted to, you know, like reposar the idea. Like I wanted to rest somehow the decision. And after 6 or 8 months, I contacted her like, hey, I want to work with you in the film. Are you interested? And she said, yeah. But I remember you mentioned she had, like the main actress or the main character had to have long hair. I just cut mine and it's like this, this long. So I was like, okay, that's an issue. Please keep keeping your hair longer and longer. Don't cut it again. But even when we shot the film, you know, like she had the film, like the hair like this. So we had to work with a wig, and it was extremely complicated. But I mean, I always knew that Daniela Daniela was the person to represent or to portray Isabel in the film, because somehow, first, she's a mother, so she knew the experience of what a mother is, and she has she practices a maternity very different to Isabel, for instance. She has a relationship with her kid that it's completely different, that it's more, I don't know, like it's completely different. But somehow that she was a mother liked me in the when I casted her. And also because, you know, Daniela is such a strong character, and you can see her like physically she's strong, and it made like a contrapunto, you know, with like a contrast between the character she was portraying and how she physically looked, and how she, you know, like she had to be inside herself all the time, which is completely different to Daniela, because she's, you know, like completely outside, you know, like she's so open and she talks about everything and she's loud, and so working that with Daniela was very interesting, you know, like completely doing the opposite for the character. What else did you ask, Christian?
About the script. How do you work the script?
The script, I mean, like we work with it, like I work on it for several years, because we started applying, and because it's a film that, you know, there's not a big plot, there's not so many actions on the film. We didn't get selected on anything, you know, like we basically went to 3-4 workshops, and that was it. Like we applied to every fund, to every workshop, to everything. Even to Ibermelia, we applied twice, and we received a no. I mean, like we didn't get any funding. At some point, after 3 years of working on many applications, and I was absolutely tired, and I was like, okay, completely disconnected with the story. I needed to work on something else or something new, because I was going to become crazy. We got the fund from Costa Rica, which is absolutely nothing. It's like $40,000, even less. And we said, like, I mean, even before receiving the fund, I talked to the producer and said, if we don't shoot the film now, I think I'm going to drop it. You know, like I cannot sustain anymore or any longer this idea. Or, I mean, I don't even remember now why I wanted to tell the story in the first place. And so we decided, okay, let's shoot it without any money. We received the 40,000 from Costa Rica, from the Costa Rican fund. And of course that was so welcome, you know, like, I mean, it was either working with 40,000 or working with nothing, which would have been way more complicated than it was with the 40,000. And we shot the film. And after the film was shot was when the film started to move, you know, like even in post-production workshops, like we got selected, we won the prizes, we won money, we received Ibermelia, we received the Spanish fund, and we completed the budget of the film after we had shot the film. It was like a film that it didn't sell as much in script. Even if the script, if you compare it to the film, it's quite similar, you know, like it's very hard. Sometimes films are better to do them than to write them, you know, like sometimes in writing, they don't feel as attractive. And then it just works out in front of the screen, you know, like behind cameras, it all works out. And thank God the film had a huge impact, you know, like it has been in more than 50 festivals around. It won prizes. It went to the Goyas, which is the first Costa Rican film to go to the Goyas, to be nominated. And it's something that we really didn't expect, you know, like we were just like up to here to receive no's in the development stage. And I wrote it, and I had even two assessments, like 2 asesorías, script doctoring, let's say, along the way, along the 3 years. And I thought I mean, like everything I wanted to say in the script was already written. Like I seriously didn't know what else to write. Mm-hmm. But at some point, when we received the funding and when we decided to shoot the film, I rewrote the script. And that was the script that I said, okay, this is it, finally. Like I can see now that, I mean, you know, probably we had to wait the 3 years in order for me to arrive to the script that we shot. So.
Nisha, Kathleen, last questions, and I'll read some comments at the end, the people that are saying hello.
Well, just jumping off of that, because that was one of the things I was most curious about. You know, it's so hard to finance a first film, no matter what, even more so as a woman. And so this is like a first film by a woman talking about feminist issues. Like, what was some of the feedback or the reactions that you got? I mean, you got a lot of no's. Did you get any feedback from those rejections?
Yeah, basically they mostly said, I mean, like, it's, I want to make a parenthesis because here in Costa Rica, there are a lot of female directors and female writers, and it's quite, like an exception of the rule. Here, there are a lot of women filmmakers that are making their films, and they're having a lot of impact internationally. And so in that sense, I never felt like it was because I was a woman. So I never questioned it. Of course, it was a film that talked about feminist topics, and that was, of course, hard. And somehow we were developing the film before the Me Too movement, before everything. So in that sense, I think it was an awkward or an uncomfortable subject to talk about. So that could have played a role on it, on so many no's along the way. And also, I mean, like, in that sense, I mean, for me, what it was more complicated, I didn't study film. I studied communication, audiovisual production, let's say. And I didn't come from a, like a recognized school, film school or whatever. I didn't have any contacts. I didn't have any, like, connections around the world that knew me, that knew who I was. So I think that was the hardest part, like financing a film of a person that nobody knows. And it's always a risk. I mean, like, it's hard. I mean, I always say, like, you're gonna receive so many no's along the way. Either you leave the project behind, or you are persistent enough to follow through and continue working and try to do the film. Especially in a place like Costa Rica, where we have absolutely no funding, no law, no nothing. And many countries in Latin America are exactly the same, in the same position. So it's quite hard. Even for my second film, it's hard, even with the trayectoria, the recorrido, trajectory, I have no idea, of the film. Even now, I'm still having, complications to fund the second film. So it's hard.
So this is a good moment to find a Canadian co-producer in this conversation.
Yes, for sure.
Do a co-production in Costa Rica, Canada. I'm just going to mention some filmmakers from Costa Rica. You have Paz Fábrega, who did Agua Fría de Mar. It's a great film, Agua Fría de Mar. Also, we have Patricia Velázquez and Sofía Durán. So there is a really, some of
Sofía Quiroz, Alexandra Latishev,
Alexandra,
Hidalgo. Like, there are a lot of women making films in Costa Rica, and that I'm really, really proud to be part of that group.
Well, if there are no more questions from Kathleen or Nisha, we're going to be closing. I mean, a lot of people is saying hello in the social media. Thank you all for being watching. A lot of the time, at least, we had between 30 and 40 people watching live. So thank you very much, Antonella, for joining us from San Jose. Everybody stay safe in Costa Rica. I hope you're doing well.
Christian, I just saw a question, because I want to recognize the person who actually did it. Was there an ant wrangler necessary? I mean, like, was there an ant wrangler? And yes, it was a divided job between Laura Castillo, which was the art director, that she mainly did or managed all the insects, because there are a lot of insects and animals that didn't appear in the final cut, but there were many, many more, and she handled them like a champion. And there was also another one that the name is, I'm sorry, but she also was like the animal wrangler, and she brought some animals to the set to work with. So I wanted just to recognize their huge effort, because everything is real. I mean, like, the bees are real, the ants are real, everything is real. So it was very hard to work with them.
Love that.
Well,
It's a fantastic film. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
thank you very much, Antonella. And well, it's the second time we had a Villa at Home conversation. We had the producer Marcel Esquivel here a couple of months ago. So the second time we had a Facebook Live with San Jose. So that's exciting. Milena Salazar, the Costa Rican filmmaker who lives in Vancouver, was watching and say hello. So saludos to Milena. And Nisha and Kathleen, thank you very much for joining us here in Vancouver.
Great.
Stay safe, everybody. Antonella, muchas gracias, and hope to see you with your next film in Vancouver in a couple of years.
And it's
Thank you
great
so
to
much.
see you again.
Thank
Great
you.
to see you again.
Stay
Gracias
safe.
a todas. Thank you to all. Ciao.
Un abrazo.
Thank you. Bye. Ciao.